We, Alabama Appleseed, are launching a paper that Callie Greer, who's going to introduce herself in a minute, and I and the rest of the Appleseed team have been working on. Callie and I have been scheming about this paper for years. And we got some funding to do it last year, and now we're doing it. I don't like the microphone, I'm going to get rid of it and just yell.
Oops.
Oh, it don't like you either.
Okay. So, this is Victims' Rights Week. And every year during Victims' Rights Week, we hear a lot from law enforcement about what victims want. But the rest of the time, me and Callie and Eddie and everyone else at Appleseed spends a lot of time hanging around in communities all around Alabama that experience a lot of violence. We spend a lot of time with people who have experienced violent victimization, who have lost loved ones to homicide. And traditionally, or traditional is hard to say because it's about a 5-year-old version of Appleseed in its current form, but for the last 5 years, Appleseed's work has largely been around defense-related topics, right? On the defense side of things, looking at making sentences more fair, getting folks out of prison, looking at alternatives to incarceration, and that work is still absolutely central to what we do. But as we've been spending time in communities that are affected by excessive charges, excessive fines, excessive sentences, it was unavoidable that we would also hear about what they were experiencing in terms of violence and what they wanted, what they were getting, what they were not getting. So for the past year, we have gone around to those same communities that we always work in and surveyed people about their experiences with violent victimization and loss. I'll give you a really quick rundown of some numbers, but I really want this to be a conversation. We surveyed 401 people around the state who had experienced violent victimization, so they've been assaulted or sexually assaulted, shot, and people who had lost loved ones to homicide. About 50% of the people that we surveyed had lost someone they loved, and 60% of those had lost more than one person to homicide. We asked them how it went afterwards. You know, did they get what they needed from the system? And when they didn't, what would they have wanted? What did they need? How could it be better? Some of our findings were pretty astonishing. 53% of the people we surveyed agreed with the statement, "I never or almost never call the police after I experience or witness violent crime." A lot of people just felt like police wouldn't take them seriously, wouldn't care about them, that it wasn't safe for them to go to police. And you'll hear tonight from some folks who either work with or are members of or both communities that really feel like the system that's in place to protect public safety is not there for them. So we went and spoke with women who were in very recent recovery from substance use disorder, who also were victims of intimate partner violence. We spoke with a group of trans women here in Montgomery who told us that every time they interact with police, it becomes a fight about the difference between how they present in person and what is on their ID. We talked with a group of undocumented immigrants who had all experienced violent victimization, but when they call the police, they may precipitate deportation proceedings, or they may just not be treated with respect. They may not be spoken to at all because they don't speak English. So we went into these communities that have complicated identities, and and communities that are marginalized intentionally by the state of Alabama, who don't fit the state's platonic ideal of an innocent victim, but who, according to national statistics that were reflected by our findings, are actually the people who are most likely to experience violent victimization. So tonight's panel, which will kick off after Callie introduces herself, includes people who work with or are members of or both these communities, and we're going to talk about what's happening now, but also about the work that all of these panelists are doing to help the communities that they're from heal. Because I want to make it clear, just because there's a lot of bad stuff going on does not mean it's entirely bleak. There are amazing people in this room doing work within their communities without any formal funding, just to make sure that it's a little bit less terrible in the aftermath of violence and loss. And one of those people is Callie Greer, who is now Alabama Appleseed's community navigator, but has been doing this work all along. So I want her to introduce herself.
Good evening. How y'all doing? All right. And everybody that want to be full? Yeah? Good. I always, or mostly always, before I speak, my centering piece is some phrase or some song. This is I got mixed emotions in this space that we're in. In this space, I was delivered from crack cocaine right next door. Chaplain Ronald prayed over me the next morning. He said, Callie, between you and your God the next morning, almost 25 years ago, I've been clean ever since. I had a personal visit. That's staying power. Met my husband right here in this place. Almost 25 years ago. That's staying power. We're still around honeymoon. I ain't bragging, I'm just saying. We're still around honeymoon. Right down the street, it's just one block over. It's where our oldest boy Murphy was shot and died on Father's Day. These very streets is where I walked and did drugs. So as I was sitting thinking about it today, I was like, okay, what am I feeling? What phrase am I hearing? What song am I feeling? And it's just, I'm just going to do a couple lines of it, and hopefully you can understand why I'm singing that song. We've also lost our daughter Venus to breast cancer, political murder. The state of Alabama still refused to expand Medicaid. She did not have adequate health care, so they just let our baby die. And I'm not just saying that, that's fact. I just can't give up now. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me this road would be easy, and I don't believe he's brought me this far to leave me. That's why I am, y'all. That's why I am. He brought me this far. So my name is Callie Greer. Those that know me, other name is Mama Callie. My passion is cooking. That's what I do. I like to feed people heart, mind, soul, spirit, body, and whole meal. Leah and I have been working together now about 5 years. She's the one, let me just let's be 100 with y'all. She's a white woman that I can do some stuff with. I can't do stuff with a lot of women, black or white. But this one right here, I do something with her. This is my ride or die when it comes to You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Just being 100. I open up like that with everybody. So when we started, of course I'm looking at a side because I didn't know her, right? But over and over again, she's been Leah. And that's what I most appreciate about her. She just was my personal cheerleader wherever she went. Whenever she's talking, I know she probably wore the collar, out there. You know, and we kept on when this thing came into existence. So this Health and Justice survey, if you haven't read the survey, if you have not seen the survey, if you haven't taken the survey, I encourage you to do that. For me and almost everybody that I was in the room with that took this survey had a breaking of some sorts from something that had never been addressed in their life, that they carried around in a wound that was unhealing. And when they would ask specific questions, it broke that place open again, and the issues were able to flow out. And when those issues start to flow out, people start to release and heal. That's not very many surveys. I don't think there's another one that exists where people can take just a simple survey and find healing from molestation as a child and not being able to tell it to anyone and be heard. About rape and battered and being beaten and being trans and not being, and because you were trans, because you was this and that, you call the police and you go to jail. You call the police for help, they put you in jail. So where in this world can you find some help? And who can you tell it to? And even worse than that, nobody ever asked you a simple question. Where does it hurt? When I first person asked me that question, whether does it hurt, I couldn't even name the spot. There were so many bruises. There was so much hurt. I couldn't even name the spot. So that's the survey became a healing tool for me. And I share with people like I'm sharing with you all about my life story, about my addiction, and all that came with it, about being molested at a very young age. And I'm so happy that God gave me this man that I have as a husband, because he supports me in that. You can't tell him nothing about me he don't already know. I made sure I told him first. That's our foundation, truth. And very many people don't get that. In this room, I don't know what you're going through, and you don't know me well enough to tell me that these are things. You know, but on that piece of paper, folks, because it was a number of people just let it out. All of us need an escape room. All of us need a safe place. Every human needs some safety from life. Because y'all know shit happens, right? And when it does, who's going to have to clean it up? So I appreciate Appleseed. I appreciate the leadership, Carl. I appreciate you, Ron. I appreciate you. I appreciate Leah. All y'all. Because for people like me, you know, it just, that doesn't exist. And you all are creating that. And when you did it in this fashion, with love, you fed them, created safe places, and then you're coming back and doing this. Showing them that it matters. They count, we honor them. So I'm going to shut up because I can go on and on about Appleseed and what they're doing. But thank y'all for coming. And we're hoping a few more come. Some people still might drop in. But I want y'all to carry in the spirit and know, don't give up. Y'all doing some good stuff out here. Y'all literally are saving people's lives. That's a heavy thing. That's a heavy thing, saving people's lives. When all you hear is death, him and death, lock them up forever. Charge them at 16 that's gonna go. Don't let them out. They did 50 years and they're gonna die. We said life, they're gonna die. But all the rage is death, die, kill. We hear a small voice say, we speak life. We speak a second chance. We speak love. Appleseed does that. Thank y'all.
Folks that are on the panel, please make your way to the front of the room. I just realized I left my questions over there. So I got introduce themselves, and then I have one question for each person, because I know all of you very well or a little well, and then follow with some questions for the panel, and then y'all should ask questions if you want to. And this is going to be, you know, intense, so there's some space in the other room to decompress. If you feel like you need to step out in the middle of this, there's this really gorgeous room over there to do that in. You can hang around afterwards, and everybody's going to make room for seconds. But let's start with Sydney and everyone. I'm going to start with Sydney. If you can, you know, introduce yourselves with your name, where you work, or where you most recently worked, or are going to work if you're in between gigs. And just a really short description of the community that you serve and your relationship to that community.
Sure. I'm Sydney Duncan. I'm an attorney at Birmingham's Outreach. We have a legal practice internal to Birmingham's Outreach. I think the only, last I checked, medical legal partnership in the state of Alabama. That means that we are client-facing. We see the people who come through our social services, and they generally, if their legal issues are identified, they come to our office. We have 4 attorneys. But lately, for the past 3 years, we've had a bifurcated legal program at Meléndez. We have the HIV component, and then we have the LGBTQ component. And the Elton John Foundation gave us a grant a while ago to serve the LGBTQ people who are not HIV positive. We found a gap in our audience, in our service audience. And so that's where my focus has been. So for the past few years, we have basically a general practice internal to our program, which is we see for anything that you have a legal issue with, whether it's divorce, housing, job situations, municipal court fines, things like that. And then we have sort of an advocacy component to our practice. And for the past few years, we have been hyper-focused on the anti-trans legislation that's been coming through Montgomery. In a coalition with ACLU and SPLC and TAPE, which is a great organization. And we have been hyper-focused on getting those things, really just educating the legislators. I don't think we're ever under any false impression that we would be able to do much about those laws, but we have nonetheless been very public about our campaign against those. So that's basically what we've been doing for the past few years at Birmingham's Outreach. We've been busy.
You're a member of the community.
I am, yeah, so I'm a woman of trans experience. That's my contribution, I guess, to my representation.
My name is Stacey Fuller, and I'm in between jobs. I'm starting a new job in a couple of weeks. Workforce development with an emphasis on previously incarcerated, based in Tennessee. My last job was a peer treatment. I'm a certified recovery peer in mental health. It was a jail treatment program in Walker County, which was a grant from the Department of Justice. And I will say it kind of intersects with why I'm on this panel. I'm a survivor of military sexual assault, which is a fancy name that the military calls rape or abuse. And very few of my female clients that I have ever worked with, very few, have not, either from the legal system within the jail, partner, have not experienced the same thing. When I got out of the Army, it was a little different because I was deployed. I lived with these people. I worked with these people. These were my people. And, you know, that shattered that illusion that you've got your back and there's this, you know, God, American pie and all this. So I got out. I went to nursing school, and one of the things I did, I worked at ICUs in the emergency rooms. I became a SANE nurse, which is a sexual assault nurse examiner. And that's strictly for the evidence gathering and the liaison between the police force and such as that. For what that's worth, there's not a lot of prosecution. I no longer have, because I was incarcerated and involved with the legal system myself, no longer a practicing nurse. So I went to a program at the University of Alabama to get certified as a peer, and while I was there, I also worked with, there's a place called Tuscaloosa Safe Center, if anybody has heard of it. It's one of many in the state of Alabama. It is a sexual assault survivor center. They have an examining room that's friendly and safe. So if there is no physical harm, like broken bones, and so they can go to this place. I was, and get their examination by the nurse, and I was trained to be an advocate, a medical and legal advocate. So it's just on the other side of that. And it offers, I do that about 2 to 4 times a month with Coleman County. I'll be on call. They have one in Birmingham, the Crisis Center, if anybody's familiar with that, over the field of Greer in Birmingham. I don't know which one it is in Montgomery, but most hospitals have people on call. Most hospitals have the same nurses. In the rural counties, I've worked through victim services at the sheriff's department. So they'll call me, and one of the things I like so much about that is the personal aspect. As a sane nurse, you really don't want to talk to these people because you can be compelled to testify. As just an advocate, I can hold their hands, I can talk to them, and I am not compelled to testify as to anything that goes on in this room. There's no evidence or anything, and I can walk them through. Very few go to trial. I think I've been all the way from in the examining room to a trial one time in 5 years. But most of that is trying to get compensation from the victims fund, which doesn't happen a lot too. There's a lot of forms to fill out and hoops to jump through. But I kind of enjoy seeing them go from A to the end, and also there's a lot of organizations that offer therapy there. It's not necessarily the state or victims compensation, but I can help point them to some place such as that. I'm hoping to get more into education, but we all know that Alabama, it's hard to teach them about condoms and sex education, let alone boundaries, behaviors, and how men are supposed to act. But I'm hoping that that's the next step, is some early education. I know the University of Alabama, being in college and having a flood of young 20-somethings, are doing a great job. But I'd like to see some of that, and I'd like to be involved with maybe going in our schools. But happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Ronald McKeithen. I work for Alabama Appleseed as their re-entry coordinator. As their re-entry coordinator, my job is, well, first, we have 2 offices, one in Birmingham, one in Montgomery. The one in Montgomery is where Leah works. She's maybe behind getting bills passed. It's going to help people, especially people that are struggling. And in Birmingham, I would like to say that's a place where we kind of work with guys that lives can change. We've gotten like 12 out, most of them done from 25 to 40 years in prison. And my job is to make their reentry more smooth. We've saved 13, and I was the second one. I did 37 years. And really I love this job because for some reason, when these guys come out, really most of them I know at one time, me being there, being able to talk to them and tell them the right things and just make them feel more comfortable and less afraid when they come out. And I love being there with them, especially going to that prison and meeting when they come out. But also taking them places to get their ID, get their teeth, eyes, get anything checked on, and get certain. And when you see that, you see them blossom, you see them get more confident. If I had all these guys who would be gotten out and we could set them back there, even though they didn't be brighter back there because of smiles. This sense of gratitude, and that's what I love about my job. And I can tell you a number of times I'm dealing with guys who get to talk and have to fight back tears because I know they're going through. And I also worked on a couple of surveys. I was the individual that I like to call it fishing. When I did some fishing to get people to come back there. And in the process of doing that, I had the opportunity to read the survey. And it called certain things for me to come up with it. I really felt, I seen women cry taking the survey. And And that was an experience because it caused me to remember things that I forgot about, the lives I dealt with. But there's one thing about my job that I love is that I know I'm saving lives. And this team I'm working with, the support we give these guys, you should see the gratification, you can see the tears. It's like, I know I'm doing some meaningful work, and it's got to be God, but I didn't have no intention. You know, 37 years of getting out of this one, get out of this Leah, but now it's like my main purpose in life has been working for other guys, you know, to the point where, like Callie said, I didn't have time to get in my art and stuff because I'm so devoted to that, and I've actually been to others, whatever, and told other artists that if I had a choice between sitting down, drawing something, or having a guy come out of prison, I'd rather do this than drawing some other time. Let me do this right now. And so that's me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angélica Meléndez, and I'm with HICA, the Hispanic Heritage Collection of Alabama. HICA was founded on Isabel Rubio, a social worker, at that time in 1999. I saw the need of creating something that can support the immigrant Latino community that was growing at that time. We have grown so much that we have 4 programs. I particularly supervise the Strong Families program, but we have our victim assistance program. It's a culturally specific linguistic program that supports victims of crime in the state of Alabama. Mostly they serve over the phone, anybody who can reach out to us, but mostly direct services in Jefferson and Shelby County. Sometimes we go a little farther, just depending on our flexibility and our capacity. Go to Chilton County as well. We serve over like 200, between 200 and 300 victims of like quarterly. Those are the people that only report to our victim assistance program and not necessarily report to law enforcement, the criminal justice system. Some people only just like collect information, learn about their options, and sometimes they're not ready to make a decision. Sometimes they tell us a story that we said, what you should report. But we are not in a position of telling them, do this and that, because it's just about their life. They're the one that know better what the options are. Mostly victims are the majority domestic violence, sexual assault. We have 51 cases in our caseload. And we have human trafficking, rape, and I don't know if you have heard, like lately, our community have been targeted on Birmingham area being victim of robbery. So, unfortunately, crimes happens anywhere in our communities who are vulnerable because of their barriers that they face. Language, they're afraid of reporting because they might be reported. Not everybody is undocumented, right? But sometimes people have had really bad experience with law enforcement that they are not sometimes willing to report. But I've been here with HICA 9 years, and it's work that is not easy because we hear a lot of things and you're so exposed to secondary traumatic exposure. But I have a great team of people that support the work, and there's the one that usually pushing us to continue to do the work that we do, especially the resilience of our community is something that is, I have no words to describe the resilience, and those are the things that keep pushing. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity for Leah, for inviting us, and to make sure that the story of the victims in our community are also heard in the state of Alabama, because they're also marginalized, and sometimes people don't know that they exist. So I'm so grateful to share this space with you. So, yeah, and this is my wonderful family advocate, and she's amazing. So, yeah.
So I'm super shy. This is your fault. I could be over there. Thank you, Leah, for having us. It was great meeting you and experiencing everything the survey. My name is Anna Ockert. I am a family victim advocate. I have been with HICA for 5 years. And everything she said, for me, I am, I have a desire to save every single one, knowing I can't, but when that victim, whatever it is that they may be going through, they're number one. I will listen, I will do whatever it takes. I get a lot of no's, so I always go in with that's the worst somebody can tell me is no. So I just find someone that will tell me yes. Sometimes I have to go around detectives, go a little bit higher up, or the DA's office, or whatever I have to do because I am one determined human being. So yeah, everything she said, but I do work. I have a lot of, my cases are never easy. Not that any case is easy, but I don't know what it is. I always tell them, like, it's like I wear something on my forehead that says, like, the craziest story, call Anna. So we do anything from accompanying victims to court, whether it's civil for protections from abuse order or criminal. I have criminal court tomorrow, bond hearings, preliminary hearings, trials. We do all of that. We assist people in filling out the PFAs as there is a language barrier. And, sometimes I get well, why don't they just make it in Spanish? But who's gonna read it in Spanish if you write it in Spanish? So, there's always that. We're constantly fighting for language advocacy wherever we go. That's just like, it's like she said, failure to report because, well, when you call 911 and you're desperate, right, if somebody's trying to strangle you or whatever may be going on, who's responding on the other end? 911, can I help you? Well, you can't communicate. So they call us, and it's hard. We're not 24/7. Sometimes they'll be like, somebody's chasing me. And I'm like, hang up, I cannot help you. Call the police, get there. When you get there, I can help you over the phone. We are not interpreters, we are bilingual advocates. The judicial system, because of the lack of interpreters, tries to sometimes utilize us. So we just have to advocate for our advocacy and let them know that, this is not a just, or that they're supposed to provide. It is what the law states. So yeah, it's a little bit about me. Thank you for having us. And thank you for making us eat yummy food.
Yeah, for anybody who didn't get it, Callie is the chef. Except of the pumpkin bread, I made the pumpkin bread. So, I have questions for each of you, although not both of you, so you'll just share. Ron.
Okay. Oh, man.
You helped us develop this survey. It has a lot of questions in it that I didn't think of. We had an incredible team of people, right? I kind of made a skeleton that I knew was deficient and then rounded up a super group of much smarter people to put all the questions in that I wouldn't have thought. And Ron was one of them. And you helped us get it into the right hands. And we've talked a lot about what the project brought up for you. And I want to know why this research felt important to you.
Well, as I read it, of course I had to really read it because I've got to talk about it to these people. But the things they were asking about violence, about rape, and it caused me to think about the first murder I saw. I was thinking about 6-year-old. This lady lived next door. I was crazy about it. She was real nice. I was in the place with her dog. But there's this guy there that her husband and boyfriend I didn't like because I heard the fighting. And a lot of times I was wondering why I lit this for. So one night, a lot of lights. My grandma was at the door. I pushed past and I could see the guy. The porch is like, from my porch, like right there with that light. And he's like laying halfway off the steps. Well, she was shot him in the face. And I was shocked to see that, but a part of me was like, because I could hear the fights and stuff. Next thing it brought up was that my sister, this guy that lived across the street, I knew he was trying to talk to her, but one day I came home, here goes the bedroom door is barricaded. I hear her in there like screaming, he's in a regular. I can't get through the door, I go to the back door, can't get in, I bust the one that can't get through it, so when I finally get in, he went out the front door. All right, he lives across the street. It wasn't never reported why I'm young, I don't know, but I know the next day, I went over to his house, it was gone, and I broke into the back window. I did some horrible things. I messed up so bad as well. When it came back, I'm standing across the street with a bat. I'm like, wait, yeah, I did that. And when the mama said, because he raped my sister, next thing I know, they moved, they gone. I can go to the point where my brother's father, he used to hustle, and I just thought he was this hell of a hustler. And so one day I'm like, hey, let me go with you, this and that. Okay, he said, come on, And so we get to, I'm thinking he's finna go and break in the house. And I'm like, man, I know he's finna break in the house. And so he convinced me, like, okay, he can get up on here, move the thing, the air conditioner, and so when I put my head up, pow, and I thought it was shot, I've seen a guy get his arm like shot off. I can go a few other things in my childhood. The thing is that me going through that survey, realized that I put all this into a door. I didn't think about it. But when I started thinking about it, I'm like, man. And then once my mother was an alcoholic, this game we played where when she come home drunk, she fall asleep, and she get up, I'm trying to stop her from leaving this game we play. And sometimes she'll get a knife, and it was like dodge a knife. No, you're not going to dodge a knife. And on 2 different occasions, she actually got me, But I'm young, I'm like, hey, okay, don't be serious, you go. I got to stop, she's going to go. But I didn't realize it later when I was in prison, started thinking about how that traumatized me, I never had a chance to really talk to nobody about all that. It was just me dealing with it. But when I got in prison, by the meditation, that I could sit down and just really focus on it, I was able to kind of deal with it. But I still had to put it aside because I'm in prison. 37. I can't just think about all that. I got to focus on that. But when we was doing the survey, and I'm having to go and talk to women about coming taking the survey, and having to warn them that it's going to bring up things. And then I walked around and I've seen them like the tears and stuff, and like I knew it was a hard survey, and I was glad I was a part of it. It helped me in a lot of ways, and I'm sure that helped other people. And that's
Thank you.
That's my spiel.
Well, Sydney, we got in touch with you because Eddie encountered someone in North Alabama. Eddie Burkhalter is another researcher at Appleseed and has been hanging out in courts, and encountered a situation that really required pretty significant, fast intervention. And I really like the group to hear about what this person was dealing with and how they encountered police to begin with. How did this person even end up in this situation, and kind of how her experience fits in with maybe it wasn't the only time you've seen something kind of like that.
Well, yeah. So the client suffers from that classic Alabama scenario, right? They have an incident, whether it's a ticket or some sort of police interaction. They get a ticket, they have a job, can't pay the ticket, don't bother going to court because they can't pay the ticket, failure to appear. This happens over and over and over again. On top of that, there's violence associated with the person's gender identity. She doesn't have proper identification. And just to let you know, kind of, for people of trans experience, what you'll find is that they have inadequate health care, and they do not use police when they're needed. Because every time they do, they have to show an identification that doesn't match their actual identity. And that causes a cascade of horrible experiences, whether it's discrimination to their face or abuse or whatever. So they opt out of those scenarios. So healthcare for these types of clients is often very lacking. And they are often have a history of abuse because they are in a situation that they can't have stopped because they can't go to anyone to have that intervention because they don't want to suffer another form of abuse on top of the abuse they're already experiencing. This client was had a long list of these sort of interactions. And so what we did is we went to the judge. We had luckily a pretty receptive judge. Usually when Birmingham Hayes Outreach shows up to a municipal court, that is a statement in and of itself, right? The judge typically understands that the client has an interest in their well-being. They've engaged in our social services or our other services, and are trying to make their life better in a certain way. Oftentimes, for people of trans experience, especially in courts that are not anywhere near Birmingham, we often have to be very careful on how we present that client to the judge, because clients don't have identification. They've been arrested and they're dead name. They may present in a way that the judge doesn't understand, but whatever's on paper usually is what rules the day with the judge. So we find these interactions, there's no one way to do any case. We just go case by case and find a solution that works for the individual client. After getting a read of the judge, in this circumstance, we have a great outcome. The judge is very receptive and recognized that the client was interested in bettering their lives and taking steps to do so outside of the courts.
I'm going to take moderator's privilege and just share. And so this wasn't how you encountered her, but the way that this person ended up in jail, the most recent time she was in jail, was that her mother called police because a family member was threatening to kill the client. Her name is Lynn, because of her identity. And mom was worried because this was a credible threat, and the cop came out and ran Lynn's name and found that Lynn had a failure to appear warrant for unpaid traffic debt and actually took her to jail. And because in the past, the last time she was in that jail, she was placed in the unit for men and she was sexually assaulted. So they understood it was not okay to put her in there, and they were unable to put her with women. So they put her in debtor's solitary confinement for 6 days. And she got out, but it was after that experience that, Appleseed does not intervene and find counsel for every debtor's prison situation we encounter, because it would be all we did. But that was why we reached out, because that was going to happen again, for sure, and that it couldn't happen again. So thank you.
Yeah, and just in Alabama, the prison systems are obviously male-female, but they make accommodations for trans people trans women in male prisons, and they're useless accommodations. It's like you're here to be a little bit longer or whatever. So what you see is in the trans community, they'll do whatever they can to avoid situations in which they engage the police. So they are often very subject to some pretty specific reasons.
Stacey. So Stacey facilitated a couple of our community conversations. Callie facilitated most of them. But after we did this survey, we also went around and had these sort of intense conversations with people. So Stacey and I went up to Coleman and met with some women who were very recently in recovery, hours and days into recovery from substance use disorder. And all of them, I think every single one of them was a victim of either sexual assault or intimate partner violence or both. You've already touched on this a little bit, but you were able to connect with them. I really just took notes verbatim. I didn't say very much at that meeting, but you said afterwards they really felt like the conversation reframed some things for them. And I want you to talk about it. Why does it matter so much to go in as a peer, which is what you are in all ways with these women? Why does it matter for you to be the one, or for Callie to be the one, or Ron to come in and host or convene these conversations?
Well, I can use my experience, and what it did for me is when you called me about last year about the opiate, a bitter pill. She had called me and talked about my experience with opiates, and I remember the understanding that you had, and just I realized, and when I became a peer, that I did have a voice, because we're these sorry junkies, these sorry addicts. Anybody would hear about An addict, you think of somebody living under a bridge, bashing each other in the head with beer bottles, and you know, people don't realize we walk amongst you. You know, I think one in 5 people are habituated to a narcotic, which means probably your kid's teacher, the pharmacist, the guy at the machine shop. Other than transportation, it's permeated in society, but we're separated. And then most of those women were there because court involved. That's a consequence. We don't go get help until it's very obvious that either go to jail. I went to rehab in prison. That's where I did one and only rehab. And would I have done that if yet? Maybe, I don't know. But I think that the shame, when you talk to somebody that's never been there, why don't you just stop? My husband, why don't you just stop, Stacey? And even with him, I got to where I just didn't talk to him about it at all. Where I could go talk to somebody else that was especially newly in recovery. You know, they're raw, their emotions, you saw them a lot, pride up and down. And people, you think people really don't. I've always said, whether I shoot myself in the head or you shoot me, there's a hole in my head that needs to be dealt with. And just because some of these people, as society says, you did it to yourself, they still need help. But you get to a point in your addiction where it's a shame-based disease. You're drugged through the courts, you're drugged through your family, church, just everywhere. And you don't have a voice because it's your fault. You know, so I think a lot of it is people are, you don't understand. Well, I do understand. And I think sometimes too that helps if I can say it out loud, and if I can say some of the worst things I've ever done in my life, and we can laugh about it, then they say, well, you know, hey, maybe I'm not so bad. So I think that's why it's important, why I think substance abuse peers are important as a part of the team. We're not therapists, we're not psychiatrists, but I think as part of the team to kind of help bridge that. I think that's what adds benefit.
So Angélica and Anna, I'm going to return to a theme that's come up again and again, and it's something that Appleseed does in our other work, and I was surprised to encounter in this project, which is ID. When we spoke with trans women here in Montgomery, they brought up ID being a barrier to interaction with law enforcement. You just said the same thing that they said, that it just is, that's it. Either I don't have ID or I don't have ID that matches my actual identity. And that's something that came up when we were talking as well, particularly with a case involving a woman who had gone to police at your suggestion and then had a pretty terrible outcome. And I wonder if you can talk about what role that little piece of paper played in that woman's life and what role it plays in the lives of the people you serve.
I mean, IDs are everything, and for some reason, logic for us would be, you go to any state, you get a state-issued ID, you're so much easier to be found, right? I would think, but no. So most of our victims have, whether it's a passport or a consulate card from their home country, when they present that ID, you know, obviously it's a foreign name with 500 names, because that's what we have. A first, a middle, your dad's last name and your mom's last name, and they're all just as important. But we have a particular, well, not a particular, we have it all the time, where, you know, you call the police and there could be a very volatile situation and the partner speaks English and the victim doesn't. So they take that side and they don't take her side and she ends up getting arrested. And so now we are victim centered, right? So we've had a few of these cases where we have to immediately seek legal counsel pro bono, because now we cannot refer to Legal Services of Alabama or the YWCA because they are victim-centered. And this person is now being judged or taken in as the criminal, right? As the offender. So Luckily we've been able to have contact with certain attorneys that are willing to do this and go fight, but it doesn't matter. You go into an environment where, and I always have to think we are in Alabama, not every place is welcoming and open and wants the diversity, especially with the Latino community. These are hardworking people, they do their taxes too, they contribute to society, but we encounter this all the time. It is devastating.
In the case that Leah particularly is talking about, we were assisting somebody with a protection from abuse order, and that protection from abuse order was violated by the defendant. We asked her to go to the police station to report that, right? And the officer asked her for her ID, which she didn't have, like a driver license. So what happened after that, since she was not able to provide him with a driver license, he immediately after she left the police station pulled her over and left her on the side of the road with her 5-year-old child and took her car. So one of the things that I was telling Leah, why a police officer is more worried about her having a driver license or not having, an ID or whatever, more than her safety. It costs us like a nightmare coordination of a lot of services trying to get that car out of the place, paid for a fee that she didn't have, and all of that. So, and those are the things that when we tell people, victims particularly, trust the criminal justice system, they're able to help you. But we are lying to them because the reality is, and I know that, but I would like for them to believe that, but the reality is that's not true, because of so many experiences that we have encountered. I have police officers who have told me over the phone, I'm making you a favor filing a police report with those illegal people. And that pisses me off, and I start telling you all the things, but that's really what's going on. And he had hung up on me over the phone, so. And then I left those people, in the police station with that officer that thought about it, and me on the other side in an office in Birmingham, where they're in Tuscaloosa. But sometimes you feel that when I'm doing off, or this is so disappointed when you can tell people trust, but that's not true. So, but those are some of the stories that we encounter, and makes our work difficult, very difficult, because especially if that victim is undocumented, they don't have a lot of access to a lot of services. We cannot go to legal services in Alabama that would help you, because if you don't have study, you are not able to get that assistance. There are some people that, they can take pro bono work, but not everybody, because that's their job, But coordination of services and telling people through the system that it's not paid for them, it's not workable and not accessible, it is what it is.
Who says what?
So, I have a couple of wrap-up questions, and then I want Ronald to ask questions. So, this is for anyone on this panel. If you could talk privately with the people who decide what to prioritize when it comes to responding to violence, what would you want them to understand about the community that you come from or serve and its experience? What would you want them to understand that they don't understand now?
I'll go. I would say for us, and Angélica mentioned it earlier, resilience, right? We do say the African American community as well as the Hispanic community, because of years and years and years and years of trauma, are so resilient. They still find a way, or they still have a little hope or something that keeps going. Wherever I go to give a presentation or whatnot, I deviate, always. And I'm just making sure I don't get in trouble, but I don't. And I tell them, how do you think that those pretty veggies got at your Publix? It wasn't the pretty white Publix truck. Or how do you think, your chicken that you want the breast or this or that or the other, how do you think it got there? These are jobs that U.S. citizens do not want. And this is a community that's doing the work, right? Construction, lawns, all of those things, those pretty buildings that you sit in. Who do you think built them or are building them? So remember that when people, and I always ask them, would you want to go live in another country? And I usually get like, no, why would I? Well, neither do they. But when you come from political persecution or gangs or cartels, you would, if you heard an ounce of what we hear, you'd want to leave too. So for us, different circumstances, obviously. She's from Puerto Rico, also U.S. citizen, for those who don't know. I am from Honduras. I was born and raised there, but my mom's job transferred. So I didn't have to come or make the trek or, get on that terrible train or cross the river, any of those things. So just think of the past trauma, the reason people are really choosing to leave for the same things we all want: safety and a better life for our kids.
Anybody else want to hit that question?
I think I would tell them to have a frank talk with their mothers, their sisters, their daughters, their aunts, because it's like 3 in 5 women have experienced sexual assault in one form or another. And that is going to be somebody in their family. And I think they always think it's an us and them. It's always going to be somebody else, and there's always a reason it happened to them. And I think if they just talk to the people that they love, they might get better understanding that it's happening to everybody for no reason sometimes.
I'm gonna take this.
Go behind you. I'll go behind you.
I'm going to take that a little reverse to your question. It's what I wish they didn't know, right? So the trans experience right now in public discord of our country is a bit of a touchstone political topic right now. If you're not familiar with trans people, you probably are familiar with the war on trans people. So it's been an interesting dynamic to watch play out from the front row. What it basically is a political movement on the right wing against trans people. We're using the trans experience as a wedge issue to kind of gain political points for people who do not know anyone who's trans. So therefore they cannot make any personal judgments on what they're saying because they don't understand the community, they don't know anyone from our community. We're like 0.01% of the population. Most people who are asked if they know trans people, it's like, 2% respond to us. So what's happening right now in right-wing media specifically is that there is a bunch of allegations, I guess, made against the trans community that just aren't true. We're basically made out to be frauds, groomers, our medical providers are butchers, et cetera, et cetera. You've probably heard it play out in this. Strangely, when those issues that they're saying these things about, the laws that are built around those presuppositions, when they go to court and the state has to prove the existence of these allegations, they can't, there's no evidence because it's all garbage to begin with. But the constant narrative that's being played out on the right wing, and let's face it, our police force is generally a very conservative group of people. They're paying attention to these things. And so when they encounter someone with trans experience, especially a person of color who happens to be trans, then they are building off their usually internal racism and then adding to that this narrative that they've been told about trans people being frauds and being whatever. And they're applying those to the situation and making the experience for that person, whether they're the victim or just happen to be engaged with law enforcement in whatever capacity, worse. And so what I wish is that they know the things they think they know, it's just not true.
My thing is that I would want them to stop blaming people in these communities and blame the environment and stop being naive, acting like you can have a part to play and don't even know what's going on. My environment, which is so many, seeing the abandoned houses, my role models was dope dealers and pimps and dice players, you know. And these are the people that was trying to teach this in me because that's all they knew. And the only reason that's all they knew because that was the only option they felt they had. And because if they was to pay attention and put these options, more options that for them and stop putting away over here and over here, then, I mean, even with the welfare, if the mother had to get on food stamps, okay, the father can't stay with her. All right? And that's, I mean, they've done that to so many to where the father, okay, if I can't be here, then I'm gonna go find somewhere else. Okay, well, they taking care of a child, I'm on the infant goes. My father, I didn't know the guy, you know? And then I've never really had respect for him, but that caused something in me. And when you're in an environment where you always see is violence and you get thinking that this is okay. This is my plight. This is how I live. I mean, I've seen, from just a 3, I think, or 4 or 5 or something, there's this lady when we was living on the South Side. I was crazy about. I thought she would dress in this man vest and have her hair a certain way, but I knew she was a woman because of the breast. I didn't know anything about homosexuality. I didn't know that she was. I didn't know this. But one day I saw her with a straight razor, and the way she cut this guy mercilessly, it's like, God, I'm afraid. I mean, every time I saw her, didn't I hide from her? You know. So violence was common, but they want to act like, well, we had nothing to do with that. There's no cure. It's your one, y'all. It's y'all fault. No. You set the stage, and you made it determined this stage is going to be like that. And so, we were just talking over there about people want to solve problems from the textbook. You can't do that. Everybody goes through their own different things. They're affected different ways. And like I said, I was juvenile 11 times, and I didn't even think, I guess they didn't have child psychiatrists. Because I remember nobody told me, like, okay, why you keep coming here? What's going on at home? I just come and sit, and my mama and grandma would come and sign me out. I love it when my mama come, we just talk. With my grandma, she gonna beat me halfway home. You know? But that's the only, but women, they say that it takes a man to raise a man, but I've seen women raise some strong men. The women in my life, they raised me strong because right now I have values that my grandma that's still to this day with me. But yet it was something about those streets that pulled me because it seemed more exciting, it seemed more this. That's because that's what was fed to me. Even from on TV movies and stuff, it gave me the impression that the streets were more exciting. There was more happening out there. Wasn't nobody trying to tell me I could be a doctor or a lawyer. I never heard that in the classroom. And even to this day, they're trying to change that. Why they tell kids, now you can't be a doctor or a lawyer, you gotta be a worker, service worker. And so my thing is like, stop playing like these people in high places and have a part in this. Put them on Front Street, tell them what they're doing wrong if you're gonna really want to do the job. If you're not gonna do that, you make me feel you just playing the game too. You expect me to play along with it, and I'm not gonna do that. I'll be so tempted to be calm and cool and want to say, just fuck you, I'm not playing this game. I'm gonna do what I need to do to help one person at a time. So I ain't gonna worry about you. As long as I can save 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's why I love my job so much. I'm saving lives, you know. That's why I love my boss. All the time.
One last question, which then we can open it up to questions, or if people are done, we will be done, or both. If you could wave a magic wand, what is one thing you would add to the system that currently exists to respond to violence? Or what would be one thing you would take away?
Everything's already there, they're just not doing it. It's there. We've had people before us that had these laws implemented, this law implemented, this and that. But it's already there. But what we're doing, we're allowing people to cut it out. They're slowly just taking it away. Just like the programs and everything. It was there. There was places for kids to go and just explore and get creative. But they're taking them away. So it's already there. Just people just implement them or sharpen them and taking them away. You know, we can come up with new things. When we're out, we'll see that it's there. The people that's in control are supposed to be doing it, just not doing their job. They're just not pushing it. Don't want to be accused of soft and crime, soft and neighborhoods. I don't know.
I'll take away gender markers. I mean, think about gender markers. What do they? Gender markers in the driver's license specifically. So like, it says male or female, right? But what does male look like? And what information does that convey on the driver's license that somebody needs to know? You have a name, have your social security number, you have our address. What is the gender marker doing for anyone? It's going to assist anybody in gathering information that's needed for any situation. Because men can look like women sometimes, and women can look like men sometimes. And then you can be trans, or you can be intersex, or, whatever, non-conforming gender, it doesn't matter. It's not doing anything to help any sort of system of government or law enforcement or safety in any capacity. It is a useless piece of information. It's doing more harm than good.
Anybody else? Nobody is required to answer that question.
It's one thing I noticed when doing these applications and all this, that I know they want to make sure separate exactly who you are. Pick this, don't this more describes you, but it seems like more than just trying to separate people and find out, okay, it's, this separation thing, instead of just making a group thing. But they make you want to separate and get in this group. It's like in prison when you go in there, you go this group, or this group, or this group, because you can't stand alone. And that's what I kind of see now when I do that. So I'll make sure I hit certain things. It's like, what the hell all this going on? I don't remember all this.
I have to say, for all the concern about identity, the 5 different categories on your driver's license, they sure as hell make it hard to get an identification. There's so many people walking around that can't get it, and whether it's because of a $15 fee, or you have to get this document to get this document, and so really they're concerned about that for the right reason. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't put social security number even on your driver's license anymore. Do they not?
No.
So, you're right. Does it matter if I'm a male or a female? It does not. Great point.
And they're figured out. You said 15 on my where?
Birth certificate, and that's 15, I think.
No, it's 36.
Is it? Birth certificate is there.
Did you want to add anything or take anything away?
Too many things. I would just say, going along with the ID and the male, the gender, I am that rebellious one that tracks white, and then I'll write a whole little statement. My husband's like, is this necessary? And I'll write Hispanic is not a race, it's a culture. Because these are things that have been implemented by the US government, again, like you say, to separate, to put you somewhere. Because why can't I just be a human?
Great. I would like to invite people to ask questions, but I also know that it is 7:16, so you do not have to stay if you are done. But if you'd like to stay and ask questions, or if you want to hang out in the other room and talk, please do that.
Fix it to go play.
Or fix you a to-go plate. Did anybody want to ask anything before we disband?
Navigator contact.
Oh yeah, I hope everybody signed in. Yeah, and Wath, I want to just shout you out because I don't know if y'all have been following the coverage of people hounding the Victims' Compensation Commission about their non-responsiveness to claims. He's the people. He's them. So thank you. They just got a new commissioner today. I don't know how much good that would do, but thank you for leading all those folks to have that confrontation, which was overdue.
How many people have gone through the training since Faith in Action has been official?
That's a good question. I call her my expert. Probably her name is Alabamians. She probably has that somewhere. So I'm not sure actually. I think it's on our database somewhere. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. But now to bring it up there, if anybody would like to volunteer to help folks fill out the application, we've got some. We have a little, I guess you say, volunteer form online to fill out. So.
What we volunteer for?
To fill out the Victims' Compensation Commission.
Alabama Crime Victims Compensation Commission form, which they said they're going to try to. The last Court of Commission meeting on which they said they're going to try to digitize it, make it electronic, you know.
Very 20th century.
Yeah, right? Yeah, try to make less pages, so.
There's a lot of amazing work already going on. Everyone on this panel is already in the communities that they are from. Like, finding ways around the edges without enough money and against headwinds that are put into place by the state to help people navigate what happens after violence occurs. And I want to make sure that we all don't walk away feeling like this is only hopeless, because it is not. Callie was already doing it when I met her. All of these people have been doing it before. We were doing this survey project. So this paper called Afterward is up on Appleseed's website. All it does is document what is already happening, what is already happening that is bad, what is already happening that is good. We need more of the good and less of the bad, and I hope that the paper will be validating for people who have been experiencing this and didn't know how many of themselves there were. I hope it will be a way to kind of corral more people to do more of the good work that's already being done. So I just want to leave us with that, because Alabama is a really frustrating, annoying, hard, challenging place to work, but it is so far from hopeless, because for every elected official and policymaker who's making things harder, and every law that exists on the foundation of a constitution that was made to make sure that only wealthy white people could have theirs and everybody else would have to scrape around the edges, there are people, like all the people in this room, and especially the people on this panel, and Callie, you know, doing the work to fight against that. So please, like, leave knowing that, not just thinking like, man, this place sucks, because it does not.
Also, if you can think about that 1 minute, I actually, when I was in prison, we thought that nobody had got nothing about us. Because I'm talking about, we couldn't get the information, we couldn't hear what y'all was doing. And so we just thought, like, even from as high as off Montgomery to whatever, we just thought we were doing nothing. And so we just, with the bills and everything. But I actually had to tell guys, man, that we were wrong. We were so wrong. And I'm not just talking about grassroots. I'm talking about even up at Montgomery. I met people that are really trying to make a change. And I just had to say, hey, man, we were wrong. Don't give up. There's people out here fighting for you. There's people in Montgomery fighting for you. And it shocked me. And I had to, like, it just evaporate my pride. Because I come out here like, man, I ain't, you know, but I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm meeting these. God, man, I was wrong. I passed judgment, but I didn't understand it because I'm there in hell. Now I'm out here where it seems like heaven. I see we got some angels out there too. And so I just want to point that out. It's like you say, just as many people, it's really trying to do the job up there. And I don't want to make it seem I'm like when I say this, but I know it's a bunch of demons up there, like people. I just don't. I know, but at the same time, I met some wonderful people up there that's really trying to do something. So I want to put that out there. And I share with the guys in prison. A lot of them still believe those that got sense, they heard it, they listened to them.
I was just going to say that if I don't know everybody in the room, so I don't know who's with Appleseed and who isn't, who has read the report and who hasn't read the report. But if you have not read it, I highly recommend that you do go to the website and read it, because all of the stories that they have talked about are in the paper in much greater detail, and it will really flesh out the successes and the failures and where the holes are, and how it is so easy that once you step off of the right path, getting back on is very hard, because one little obstacle can lead you to another little, and so it's a very interesting paper. And so if you haven't read it, and maybe everyone here has read it.
No one, you read it because you copy edited it, but nobody else has read it.
Well, don't read it because I copy it. Don't read it for that. But it's really amazing, and it goes, all of their stories that they talk about are in there, but it goes into much greater depth, and there's a lot of truth amongst all of the pain, and so, but it's important for people to hear it, because people who get thrown away, discarded, pushed aside, fall off the path, are never considered people again. And so this shows you that the system doesn't want you to be a person, and yet people are trying to give back. People who have been in prison are no longer, they're not treated like people. Some people give up and act, well, if you're treated like an animal, I'm gonna act like an animal. Well, that does no good, because that just perpetuates whatever. But we should, I cannot recommend it enough that we should read this paper, because it's really important, because it does speak to things that we don't normally talk about.
And these typos in the paper are on you, though.
They are totally on me. They are totally on me. But please do read it. It's very important. It's a very important document.
So I want to, Carla, before we leave, our next piece that we're going to do, can we invite people to, let's not lose that.
Just a couple things from me. A lot of times with our papers, they have really clear directives. Let's pass a bill. Here's a recommendation. Here's a policy solution. Not so with this paper. We want to start really a statewide conversation about what happens after violence, how the state's current response is working. So you all are our first conversation, and if you are connected with other groups, organizations that want to, maybe carry this on, we would welcome that. We're going to be looking for other locations to have this conversation. So thank you all for showing up when we were, this report kind of has just been born, and really nobody but about 4 of us have read it because it just hit the website today. But we are working, Callie and Dana are actually working on a similar project, a small focus group where we want to talk to people in this community impacted by violence and harm about what criminal justice reform really looks like to you. And we would love to have some folks in this room, part of that small focus group in a couple weeks. So please either sign up or see Callie or see Dana over here if you'd like to be part of that group.
But if there's someone you want to invite to be part.
Yeah, or invite somebody. It'll be right here in Montgomery. And there will probably be food.
If you happen to be an elected official, like a judge or someone at the state house, or you happen to work for the Department of Pardons and Paroles or any other type of state entity, and you think that there's space at that entity for smaller conversation, we know this paper was hard to write, it was hard to investigate, conversations were hard to have, and there's just a lot of harms to unpack. And they are cumulatively all of our problem, and most of us have contributed to the problem in some way. But it's going to be easy for people that are in charge to feel like we're saying it's their fault. It is no one person's fault. It's no one alive. Even if you added all of them up, it's not their fault. This has existed and been accumulating for a long time. So if you happen to be a person who's a judge or a state representative or work for the Bureau of Pardons and Paroles, and you think there's space for a smaller conversation, we would love to have that.
And if you don't have access to the internet, I bet Leah can figure out a way to
Probably
do a copy of the paper.
Yeah.
But anyway, read it.